Okay, great. I would like to call to order the Monday, August 3rd meeting of the Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore,
Here.
Alder Schilling,
Here.
Alder Wood,
Here.
Alder Core,
Here.
Alder Thomas,
Here.
Alder Groupie,
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 20th? I'm sorry, I forgot about the Pledge of Allegiance. Will all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 20th meeting?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any corrections or additions?
I have just, it's kind of a point of clarification. On page 8, second paragraph, Alder Core says she wanted to thank the Homburgs for donating that boulder. And I did confirm that we did have to purchase that. They did want to donate, but that donation did not work out.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is appearances. Now, Brian, should we wait until the item comes up, or would you like the appearances to be now?
I would do them now.
Okay. All right. The first person who would like to speak is Jillian Fink, 6307 Westgate Road, who would like to talk about the stop stick policy.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Gillian Fink, and I live on Westgate Road here in Monona. And I wanted to thank all of the alders for all of your work that you do day in and day out to help us do everything for the city. And I also wanted to just mention that I got a chance to attend the public safety meeting last month and listen to some of the deliberations about lots of different topics, but one of them is the stop sticks. And they seem, I know we bought them already, and I know that we're trying to mitigate high speed chases, I think, or pursuits, I guess is the right word. And I was wondering if the city council wanted to talk about that amongst themselves this evening and ask if we might see how the stop sticks fit into our future policies, which aren't going to be sifted and winnowed, so to speak, until later on in this fall when we have our consultants and Nehemiah do some work on behalf of the city. So I was wondering if the council may consider later this evening to hold off on the policy regarding stop sticks. Thank you so much for all you do and for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Jeff Hins, 5100 Tonawatha Trail, who would like to speak about the encroachment on park property at 1224 Birchhaven Circle. Jeff, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here to talk about the encroachment on park space, and what I'd like to just start out with is reiterating a statement that Alder Thomas had made at the last council meeting. And that statement was that the Park and Recreation Board are the protectors of public space. And I fully agree with that statement. And I think it's also a statement that was made that really would be a focus for really the committees as well as the staff of others who do services for the city. But I think most importantly, it's also for members of the council. I think you have the final say in many things. And I think, for this evening, for the discussion, looking at, protectors of public space is very important. I think that if you look at giving up public space and it happens, it's gone forever. So I think that's a very important statement that was made. What I would like to address at this point, and I'm not sure how Kathy Thomas's presenting the information, but earlier Jake Anderson had sent members of the park board a amendment that I believe will be proposed this evening. And what I would like to do is just provide some thoughts that I have with the amendment that I saw earlier this morning. And it's some
You wanna
wording.
hang on just a minute, Jeff? I think Kathy had some information about that amendment.
It's not going to be presented because the petitioner is going to take down the lift.
Okay,
I found that out and I sent that out about later this afternoon.
okay. Well, I think I certainly appreciate you putting together an amendment, Kathy, and for the Novaks, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to make the changes. And that's all I would have.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jeff. Okay, do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 1A, consideration of resolution 20-7-2421, approval to submit 2019 compliance maintenance annual report, CMAR review and recommendation put forth by the Public Works Director. Stan here, or were you going to talk about that, Brian?
Yeah, I'll take this. So we discussed this at our
First of
last
all,
meeting.
is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move approval.
Second,
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. So I'll discuss this. Again, this is an excellent report for our system. This is a consistent A score that we've been getting over the last number of years. Not anything out of normal for this. There was no corrective actions that the DNR requested us to take. So staff is recommending acceptance and adoption of the report.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is approved. Next item 1B, consideration of resolution 20-7-2422, enforcing encroachment of structures at 1224 Birchhaven Circle onto city property, put forth by the Parks and Rec Board. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move approval.
Second.
Jake?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have anything additional to add after our meeting 2 weeks ago. So I think you have the information in front of you regarding the encroachment, the Parks Board recommendation regarding the removal of the boat lift and a year-to-year lease on the shed. I believe Alder Thomas might have some further details of a conversation with the Novaks that she had that I believe she'd like to share at this time.
well, my question is, are the Novaks going to have an opportunity to speak before we discuss this?
If they would like to. Do you want to go ahead and say what you like, and then we'll
Yeah.
continue our discussion?
So a lot has changed since our last meeting. We reached out to the original owners who built the boat lift and who built the shed just to see if they had any sort of documentation for either. He actually did have some documentation, provided a permit for the shed signed by Mr. Frederickson, which you guys have in the agenda today. He could not come up with anything for the boat lift. I also reached out to the DNR and could not come up with anything for the boat lift. So, this whole situation has just really been weighing on us, and we'd really like to come to a resolution. So we feel that a reasonable solution for this would be for the board to grant us an easement for the shed, and we will remove the boat lift at our expense. Really, since COVID, money's been very tight. We started our home remodel project pre-COVID. Katie's been off work since COVID. We have 2 young daughters. I work in healthcare, and I brought in no income for a month and a half. And just removing this boat lift is going to cause a financial burden for us. But even with this financial burden, we still feel that a reasonable solution is to grant us an easement for the shed, and we will still remove the boat lift any way possible. when I think about it, you know, you look at the Parks and Rec Board, you know, you guys want to set, or they want to set a precedence for encroachments. We've heard this a number of times. So what precedence would it set if you revoked a valid permit for the shed that was issued 23 years ago? It's just almost counteractive. And so we really do feel that an easement for the shed would be a reasonable solution to this. And I hope you guys feel the same.
Okay, Kathy, did you?
Well, I was just, I asked them about, they mentioned this. I should back up and say that when I was going to introduce the resolution, I thought it was fair to call them and let them know that it was coming so they could think about it. And they said, and after much deliberation, that the big thing is the shed. And they asked about an easement at the park board. Jay, correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding of this, but that they asked about an easement at the park board, but you or someone thought you needed a legal opinion from Bill Cole about whether that was possible.
I think partly depending on how the property was conveyed to the city, as it was related to Bill on whether that was possible or not. I think the discussion though from the Parks Board was more about setting precedent for easements, kind of the asking for forgiveness instead of permission on any future structures that would can potentially be built on park property. But I defer to Doug and Molly.
My dilemma as I drilled down on this is they have a permit that the city gave them, not them, the people that they bought the house from or one of the, whoever put it up. They have a permit and the city said you can do this. Now, my experience is that says that's a legal shed. Even though it's on park property, we told them they could do that. I'm not sure how we handle that, and I wish that the park board had the opportunity to think about an easement. And I guess I'd like you to weigh in, Jake, with your thoughts on whether you think an easement would be reasonable and precedent setting, given the fact that there's probably no other property in the city of Monona where someone has been given a permit.
Alder Wood as chair and then Alder Groupie.
But could I have a response from Jake?
Okay, I thought maybe Doug might have something to say about that idea, but
Yeah,
Jake, you want to,
sure.
go ahead, Jake.
Well, I was going to address something Kathy said.
Well, first of all, Jake, did you have a response to what Alder Thomas said? Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, given that information, I think I feel comfortable in defending additional encroachment issues with being able to grant an easement in this particular situation, given that they had a building permit at that time. I'm cautious and would like to, for the record, to state that we don't want people to build something and then ask for forgiveness or falsify a building permit or property boundary in order to put something on park property. However, in this instance, I think moving forward, an easement allowance, I'm okay with it, I guess, knowing that the fact that as we move forward, this wasn't everyone that has an oopsies that gets an easement, approval, that basically you were in a position where you got an approved permit, but that we would be reviewing all these permit applications moving forward adjacent to park property.
Alder Wood.
Yeah, so first, with respect to the permit, if you look at page 23 in the packet, there's the hand-drawn diagram that apparently was submitted along with that application at the time for the shed. And it appears to indicate that the shed is actually on their property, not in the park, but it's obviously also is the hand-drawn map. I guess it wasn't clear at the Parks Board, and I still don't think it's really clear if the permit was given for the location it was built. And anyway, in any event, it shouldn't have been granted to allow it to be in the park, but it was, and it's there. It's a fairly minor encroachment, and the Parks Board, after much deliberation, decided that it would be okay to allow that to stay with the removal of the boat lift, which is a lot bigger encroachment. We did discuss whether an easement or a lease arrangement, and preferred a lease arrangement as being not a long-term commitment necessarily. I guess I would ask Bill Cole after Molly speaks to address, whether we could grant an easement on park property or not.
Alder Groupie and then the city attorney.
Yeah, I just think it'd be useful for everyone to maybe just briefly delineate the difference between the lease option that we proposed and the easement, just so we all have a clear understanding of, what that means and what it would indicate for the future use of the parkland.
Okay, Attorney Cole, maybe you could address that.
Sure, I can. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
And an easement is a property right. So an easement will run with the land, meaning if these individuals sell it, the new owner will benefit from that easement. A lease does not run with the land. A lease is personal to the lessee. So if the city were to grant a lease to the individuals and they were to sell their property, that lease would not transfer to a new buyer. So an easement embodies much greater property rights than a lease does. The other thing is leases tend to be for a stated term. Easements can be for a stated term, although traditionally they're more of a permanent property right. So it boils down principally for the council tonight as to the duration of the right that they would want to grant, if at all. If you wanted to grant a permanent right, an easement would be the more logical tool. If you wanted to grant just a temporary right for a stated period of time that would not carry through to any new buyers of the property, you would grant a lease. The only caveat I would mention to all of that is, as I mentioned at the last meeting, I don't know how we acquired this property. Oftentimes we would acquire it through dedication, and that would embody limitations as to what we could do with it. So if we can certainly lease it, if the council's inclined to grant a permanent easement, I think we would need a title search done to know how we obtain title. I would recommend, if we go that route, that the applicant reimburse the city for the cost of that title policy. It would be a few $100s.
Alder Groupie. Thank you, Bill.
So I guess I'm curious, this question is for the Novak. So are you asking for a permanent easement? And if so, I mean, to me, it seems that it's a pretty similar situation here. As in, the city could revoke the easement or the lease at some point if it's not a permanent easement request. And I'm just wondering what your proposed time period is and why you feel that this would be essential versus a lease, since if you leave the property, it may or may not be an essential storage space for the next owners.
Well, to answer your question, it would be harder to sell it'd be a potential financial burden and harder for us to sell the house without the shed. And then also when it comes down to it, we could sell in a couple of years, or it could be 20 years. It would be very difficult to, figure out who's in charge of either tearing that down or it would just cause more headaches on a sale of our home. Additionally, we just feel that it's a reasonable solution to give us or to grant us an easement, really a lifelong easement, since there was a permit given by the city. So that's really, I mean, we feel very strongly about that because at some point in time, someone checked off or signed off on this and allowed it to be built here. And we've always been under the understanding that this is part of our house. It's tied into that permit for the 1224 Birch Haven Circle property. Again, the boat lift is, we couldn't find anything on that. We're just trying to come up with a reasonable solution and a resolution tonight. And we feel that very strongly that that is the most reasonable thing for us.
So you are requesting a permanent easement. Is that, I just want to be clear that that's what your ask is, not a, on a limited basis as the lease would be.
A permanent easement is what we would be asking for.
Thank you.
Alder Thomas.
Can you build a shed someplace else on your property?
No.
And why is it?
Doug
has explained, but we have a very odd shaped lot, and there really was no, with all of the boundaries of the water and the size, there was really no other spot for it to go.
That's correct. The particularly because it faces the channel there as well. No structures are allowed to be built in the shore yard, so everything I believe it would be west of the house, closer to the channel. Nothing there is buildable. And the applicants already had a variance for the south side closest to the neighbor. So it really does limit the location. I think with that, with the same scale or the same size shed, I don't believe there is a buildable area currently on the site.
My final question is, can someone tell me in total how much of the shed is on parkland? I know it's 3 feet at one point. But how long is that 3 feet? Are we talking?
It encroaches the most at 3 feet 9 inches, and then it's right pretty much on the city property on the other corner. So we're talking about 19-20 square feet of property, which again, when you look at the parks property, the most valuable part is the waterfront, which we are in agreement on that we will remove that area. This is part that, it's right next to our house. So it's not, I would say it's not as valuable as the real estate on the water.
So if I may continue, Mayor. So if you don't have the shed, whatever is stored in the shed will have to be stored outdoors.
Pretty much.
Anyone else? Well, from what Attorney Cole says, it sounds like if you are of a mind to talk about granting an easement, you need to do a title search. Correct? So I don't think it can be decided tonight.
Yeah.
How would one of the council members like to make some kind of a?
Can I ask a
Brian?
point of information?
Sure.
This is a question for Attorney Cole. Could, if the council were so inclined tonight to modify Resolution 20-7-2422 to change the language to allow an easement rather than a license, could it be contingent upon title search being conducted, adding that as a condition of approval?
It could. It would have to be more than just conducting the title search. The title search would also have to indicate that we have the right to grant that property. Grant an easement. I would also note we're talking a title search not of their property, of the park property, of Winnequa Park.
Yeah.
Alder Thomas.
Yeah, I think there are several people, myself included, who don't like the idea of changing the park board decision and would like to give them an opportunity to rethink this and think about an easement once the title search is done. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Alder Coor had her hand raised. Jen, did you have something to?
And maybe in the minority here, but I'm not comfortable with an easement whatsoever. I would prefer that we maintain a lease so that the property, once it changes hands, we remove the shed. I feel like this is like if someone did a poor electrical job and didn't pull permits on your house and you had to replace the electrical. Or they pulled a permit and then didn't do the right thing. It's an unfortunate situation, but it is what it is. We can grant you a lease so that as long as you stay in the property, you can have your shed. But upon changing hands, I think that there's no other way we can correct this wrong.
Alder Wood.
I was just gonna say, I don't know, I don't think the Parks Board would need to or necessarily want to discuss this again. And I think for the Novak's benefit, you know, if we could do whatever we do tonight and bring some closure to it and not have it drag out for several more meetings. So, you know, if the council decides that an easement is appropriate, I don't think the Parks Board, I mean, they made the recommendation, they know it's a recommendation. So I think they'd be okay with that.
You think they'd be okay with an easement?
I think they'd be okay with the council deciding it.
Would someone like to propose an amended resolution? Alder Thomas?
To get the decision on the floor, I will move that we allow a permanent easement.
Don't we already have a motion on the floor with a current resolution?
We do, don't we?
I'm amending.
You're amending it to. So you're amending the fourth paragraph. Is that correct?
No.
Because you talked about allowing it right there. Currently, it says allowed to remain under a year-to-year license with removal either at the time of sale of the property or request.
Under an easement, contingent upon a title search. Is that the way you want it worded, Attorney Cole?
Yes, that works.
I'll second that for discussion. And the amendment is only in the now therefore be it resolved clause, not the whereas. The fourth paragraph refers to what the Parks Board recommendation.
Oh, you're
was.
right. So you're saying it should be in the fifth, in the final
Right.
paragraph?
Only in the resolved clause.
Okay. Which is the fifth one.
Thank you.
Right.
So would you like to give the city clerk a little more direction as to exactly which words you'd like to replace, or?
Yes, please, that'd be nice.
If I can just speak for, is all that needs to be changed to accomplish what I think the movement wants is in the now therefore paragraph, all words that say license would be changed to easement. And then also conditioned upon a title search.
Would you want to, I assume you'd want to drop the line of the part about it's an easement to remain in its current location. Currently it says until such time as either the property is sold or the city requests removal. Do we want the easement to run with the property, or what's the?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it has to, otherwise it doesn't matter whether it's a license or an easement if it doesn't run with the property.
So we should drop that part of the line,
Yep, thank you.
City clerk, do you have that? And if you do, would you like to read it back to us?
I can read it back.
Okay, Brian's gonna do that.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, that staff is authorized and directed to grant the property owner an easement in the form approved by the city attorney to permit the shed to remain in its current location, period. The easement is conditioned upon a title search and shall not be granted until the property owner completely remove the encroaching boat lift at their sole cost at the satisfaction of the Parks and Recreation Director no later than November 1, 2020.
Attorney Cole, does that sound
Yes.
okay? Any other discussion? Okay,
Yeah.
so.
I just wanted to point out real quick, that the park board vote was really close. It came down to the last vote. I think it was like a 5-4 vote. So, they were pretty split on it as well.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah.
Doug?
Yeah, I'm going to support this, even though initially I did not like the idea of granting an easement. But listening to Doug Plowman talk about that there's, because of the others, setback restrictions on the property, there's not another location for it. Also, the fact that the city did grant a permit, I think the permit was in error, but the permit was granted. And that it's a fairly minimal intrusion into the park.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to vote now on the amended resolution. Correct?
An amendment to the resolution, yes.
Amendment to the resolution, yes. So all in favor, say aye.
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 I heard 2 ayes. Is anyone else? I think a couple people might be on mute. All opposed? Say
Aye.
Nay.
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 I'm sorry.
Alder
was-
Schilling, I didn't hear yours.
I was an aye.
You were an aye, so we have a tie. Is that correct? 3-3?
Correct.
Okay, so the mayor breaks the tie then, correct?
yes.
Correct.
I will vote aye for the reasons that Alder Wood gave previously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Now, do we need to go back and vote on the original?
Yes.
Correct, original resolution, okay. So.
As it's been now amended.
As it's been now amended, okay. So this is, again, a vote on the original resolution as it's now been amended. Is anyone want to discuss this any further?
Mayor, the only thing I would ask, if the title search, as I say, will be a couple $100. I don't know if you want to ask the applicant if they're willing to reimburse the city for those costs or if you would like the city to pay those. But now would be the time to solicit the agreement of the property owner if the desire was to have them pay for it.
So is that something you'd like included in the,
You want an amendment?
does that need to have an amendment, Bill?
I don't think you need an amendment, just the consent. If the property owner is willing to pay for it, they can acknowledge that now.
I think that would be, you'd agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now we are going to vote on the motion as amended, the original motion as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Alder Schilling, you were an aye as well? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Opposed, say nay.
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 Okay, then once again, I will break the tie and vote aye. Okay, so I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we'll move on to new business, item 2A, and this is started for immediate approval. Consideration of resolution 20-8-2428, providing for the sale of 4,725,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds and authorizing the redemption of taxable general obligation promissory notes dated October 3rd, 2011, and taxable note anticipation notes series 2017D, put forth by the finance director. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Take the item out of order.
There's a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Mark?
Yes, this refinancing, there's two issues involved here. The city is or staff is looking to refinance two loans and combine into one loan. One is a 2017 taxable band, which is a 5-year note that is supposed to be refinanced. Would be refinanced 2022, but with the market rate as today, we're looking to refinance this sooner than later. The remaining balance is $3,750,000. $700,000 relates to TIP 4, and $3,500,000 relates to TIF number 9. So that will get us into shorter to better interest rates. That's a good idea to take care of right now. The second one is a 2011 taxable GO promissory note. This is really more a strategy dealing with TIFs. So this 2011 taxable GO promissory note is a TIF 6 loan. What we're looking to do with the CDA, we're looking to set up TIF 6 as a donor district to TIF number 5. TIF 6, as people don't know, is Meriter and UW area. TIF 5 is the former Garden Circle, now MSP area. So what we're looking to do is, right now, TIF 5 is kind of needs extra money. TIF 5 was back when Mayor Call was the mayor, purchased these properties. These were rundown apartments. All the owners of the apartments were looking to get out. The city bought them up and turned them into heritage now. With that, there were some other issues too with TIF 5. The area with the bowling alley, the assessments have gone down, so it's having a negative impact on the TIF 5 increment. What we're looking to do is stretch out the loan payments in TIF number 6, reducing it to roughly about $100,000 per year. That way we can get more of the increment over to TIF 5, pay back their debt faster and pay that off quicker. One con to this is instead of TIF 6 being paid off in 7 years, it would be paid off in 10 years now. So that is the one drawback, but it will make the TIF 5 whole in the end, and that way there'd be would not go on to the taxpayers wouldn't have to pay anything. Don't do this and don't do the donor district, there could be a risk down the line that we're in the red and the taxpayers would come up with money. But doing this refinancing in the donor district, we will not have to have that situation happen. That's all I have.
And this is
just
basically a vote to start the process, correct?
Yeah, this is the authorization for Jeff Belangi, our financial advisor, to start working with bondholders. He'll come back, not this next meeting, the meeting after that, with the rates, and that time to approve the rates. That's all I have.
Questions, anyone? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Next, item B, consideration of resolution 20-8-2426, authorizing a contract with the Nehemiah Center for Community Facilitation Services, put forth by the city administrator. Mr. Gatto.
Thank you. This item is for your first read this evening. As you recall, as part of our resolution 20-6-2419, City Council had adopted 5 action steps in regards to the June 2nd police call, one of which was to work with a facilitation professional or organization that does that type of work to organize ongoing community conversations to raise awareness about issues of racial bias that may exist in the community and how we can address them. Since the adoption of that resolution, city staff and the mayor and City Council President Wood have had a number of conversations with the Nehemiah Center out of Madison, who does this type of facilitation work on kind of scoping out a proposal for how they could best help Monona. So what you have before you in your packets tonight is the scope of work for what kind of we envision the first year of a multi-year process. And I've asked Mr. Harry Hawkins from Nehemiah Center to be with us tonight to provide an overview of the proposal and answer any questions that you might have on it. But just to give you a very high level review of the proposal, there's a number of items that we are endeavoring to work with Nehemiah Center on. The first of which, and kind of the kickoff to this whole process, would be an assessment of the community in terms of kind of analyzing the issues of implicit bias and systemic racism in Monona, and kind of see where we're at and what things we have to work on. In addition to that, would there be executive coaching for city council members and key staff members? There would be coordination of listening sessions to obtain community input on these topics and experiences that people are having in the community. There'd be the development of a police training plan to incorporate some of these items into our ongoing training for officers in the department. There'd be creation of a community advisory council to provide a forum for people to provide their experiences and their voices on these issues. And then there'd be a number of other cultural engagement sessions and a specific African American history kind of seminar or educational component that would be developed as part of this. So with that, I'll maybe pause for a moment and let Mr. Hawkins step in and provide some additional context to not only the work that Nehemiah does, but also what they're envisioning for Monona.
Thank you all. Thank you all for having me here and for entertaining our services. And so I think I want to give a little bit of background about the work that we do and how we got started. A few years ago, we started a U.S. Black History course based on a lot of people asking our founder, Dr. G, to help them understand race issues better. He had written a op-ed piece in the Cap Times titled Justified Anger, talking about his experiences and how he really thought that his degree, his years of service in Madison, one of the most tenured clergy person in the city, would protect him from racism, but yet he was profiled in his church parking lot, and a white staff member had to kind of come to his rescue. And when he was talking about that at a meeting, someone came up to him afterwards and said, I'm so glad you're not one of those angry black men. And he says, I am angry, and I should be, right? I have a right to be. And so essentially what had happened was he really wrote this piece as his kind of farewell to Madison. But when people responded and said, wait, don't leave, we want to know, how do we fix this? Really created this initiative called Justified Anger. And there were a lot of well-meaning white people who wanted to help. But the idea was, before we just unleashed the goodwill on the community, people really need to have a grounding and a foundation in history and how we got here. So we started our U.S. Black History course. We have up to just at 1,000 people participate in that course over the last few years. And from that, when people went through this, they wanted to know how could we bring this experience to their business, to their church, to their school district. And so we started a few years ago doing the consulting services. So we take the elements of the history class, which are grounded in the historical reference to start. We take that, we pair that with kind of a repositioning of a framework through contextualization and personal experiences. So it's one thing to hear a statistic about police brutality, but another thing to hear someone talk about their fear when they're pulled over by a police officer. So you pair those two things together, personal experience, history, and then we finished off with a little bit of personal reflection. So over the years, we've really put together a process that doesn't copy the class, but it takes the elements of that class and puts them into context in different places. So we've worked with school districts, we worked with some of the larger corporations, we worked with nonprofits, and we found that typically those organizations and groups who did longer work or longer term work tend to have better results. So if we've really shied away from the one-off trainings where have a 2 or 3 hour training and everyone congratulates themselves afterwards. But we really found out that if we can do this work over a period of years, and typically we're hoping for a 3-year process, that we have better results. Year one is typically going to be the assessment and really kind of preparing the people for change. So often people want the results of the change, but they haven't really prepared it. And we always use the analogy of farming. So I'm not from the Madison area. I came from Atlanta. So having to drive by farms really always gives me some fresh references when we're talking about that. But essentially, getting the ground ready takes longer than actually growing the food, right? There's a lot of work that goes into prepping the ground, and that's really year one. We let people know that it's a 3-year process, but essentially, we don't require a 3-year commitment, because this is not a technical problem where you have a technical solution. It's complex and adaptive. And so whenever you sit down and you begin to work with people, you always find out things that you didn't know. And you also find out some things that you didn't know you needed to fix, or that you find hidden treasures. And you find that, oh, there's a wealth of human capital in this area. So we have to remain flexible, because when you're dealing with people, as I'm sure you all are aware, flexibility is key in any solution that you have. And so that's really kind of an overview of how we got into the work. There are 3 of us that really help shape and deliver this information. So Dr. G, as Mr. Gatto mentioned, would be doing some of the executive coaching. Dr. Karen Reese, who joined us, is our Vice President of Research and Education. So she heads up the assessment and also shapes the curriculum to make sure that the research is up to date and we're applying that properly. And I have an extensive background in implementation and performance management. So really organizational behavior. Why do people do what they do at work or in groups is really my background. So between the 3 of us, we combine a multidisciplinary approach to not only just engaging with people, but bringing culturally relevant understanding to that, and really relying on kind of the transformational leadership skills and experience of Dr. G. He has 30 plus years of experience of creating multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational spaces, both as in the faith community, excuse me, with Fountain of Life Covenant Church, and also with Nehemiah Community Development Corporation, which is going to be 28 years old this year. So he's done a great job of creating that space that many people want to have in their organizations and in their cities. So we kind of combine that tag team and deliver that to it. And if you had any questions, Karen, I don't know if you want to talk about the assessment and how that works. I typically let Karen handle that part.
Sure. The assessment that we do is really meant as a guide to help shape the kind of training that we offer. So as Harry may have mentioned, we operate from a framework because we really want to custom fit our training to the needs of the people that we're working with. So the assessment is a process of interviews with key staff and stakeholders, and those will be identified by city leadership. And we can also do a couple of focus groups. And then we'll also draw from the listening sessions that we have built into this proposal. I'll be looking for what are the equity goals set as a city. And then based on those goals as defined by leadership, how do other people feel about those goals? Are they in line? Do they have similar expectations? Do they feel the city is on track? Do they feel the city is off track? And what kinds of things might we need to get everyone unified on those goals? So it's really meant as a guiding tool. And it also provides some insight in some cases on the differences in perception from the leadership level on out to the community member level to make sure maybe there's great alignment, maybe there's not, but this process allows us to identify that and move forward. And I'll just mention that our assessment process, we do the bulk of it at the beginning to give us this guidance. but our evaluation of the process is really continuous and it's meant to be flexible and dynamic. So we know, as Harry mentioned, this is not a straight line from point A to point B. We're doing exploring as we go, and we want to be flexible to be able to change course if needed to make sure that we meet the goal. So we're doing continuous evaluation through this process to make sure we're on track, as opposed to the practice of just evaluating at the end of the contract to see, did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? So we're going to want to make sure that we got it right by the end of the contract.
And the pieces of our proposal, to kind of give you an overview, because I know you all, I'm sure, have tons of things to read, but if you look at the, we have the, I'll kind of group them in certain categories. So part of what we're trying to do is just to make sure that once at the end of the year, we want to make sure that the city of Monona understands how the community feels about these issues and what they believe should be done, that the leadership has a way to really think through and address these issues, and that we've given the community a chance to listen to that. So that's really kind of our assessment process, the executive coaching sessions, and our listening sessions is really to give the leadership of Monona the ability to understand and hear from the community, and also give the community a chance to really speak their needs to the leadership. And then the next piece, the police training plan and the cultural engagement sessions. Really, these are about education and creating that foundation of history. And so once we have that, then the Community Advisory Council creation and the African American assessment. Really, this is about kind of setting us up for the year 2 and beyond, is you really want to find people who want to do this work, who want to help make things better. And so we're trying to identify those people, get them to identify with each other, form a group. And so ideally what happens is eventually, once we're done, you have a fully functional group that can continue to provide that community feedback to the city and be that bridge between your goals, your needs, and understanding. And typically, I'll use myself as an example. So I live in Oregon, and Dr. G, when we were giving a talk to the Oregon community, he also challenged me to get more involved with the village. And he said, yep, you know what? Yeah, you go ahead and you help them. You say what you need to say, but you also need to get involved. And so that's the idea. It's not just, it should be a two-way street. And we want to help create that cohort of people who will begin to become your foundation or your core for doing this work.
Dr. Reese, did you have anything else to add?
No, not at this time. I think Harry covered it pretty well, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Anybody? Alder Moore.
Yeah, I just, I had a couple of questions and also a comment. I guess my comment is, first of all, welcome to both of you. And Harry, thank you for sitting through that other long stretch of meeting. I'm sure you've done that before, but but beyond that, you know, you probably heard that that one other thing that we're considering here in Monona is what's referred to as a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was brought forward by some people in the community. And I know that you have in your proposal some thoughts around having an advisory group or a group of champions. I like to call, I'm also a consultant, so I always know having the right people champion is an important thing. So I'm wondering, if not tonight, certainly if how you see potentially those two things, or if you see those two things, we don't want those two things to get in the way, obviously, and we think they could be complementary to one another. So I'd love to hear what you think about that. And just in relation to that, I wanted to let the rest of the council know, because I know I'm personally uncomfortable with, frankly, with an all-white council making this decision without people of color in the room. except for our guests tonight. And I just wanted the rest of the council to know that this proposal from Nehemiah was actually shared with the individuals of color that we've been working with on the commission for feedback, and they all provided feedback to that. So I wish they were here tonight, but I just wanted to let you know that they did provide some feedback to the mayor and to Brian. And I guess my question mostly relates to, or questions relates to two things. One is, have you worked with other municipalities in your work? I know you've done a variety of different things, but have you worked with other municipalities? And B, how the heck do you get the right people in the room? Because it seems to me, it certainly seems to me that, you know, one of the challenges in this work is that oftentimes the people that may be in need of, let's say, more enlightenment in terms of their own behaviors are not necessarily going to show up. And it's going to be particularly hard at this COVID time. So I'm just also curious in relation to that, about A, showing up, and B, showing up virtually and your experiences there.
So I think, well, to start with the first one, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, we don't believe that the Community Advisory Council will be something that will replace that. One of the challenges that we have often found is that people aren't always as comfortable sharing their true selves if what they say might be subject to open records requests and things like that. So the best way to describe that succinctly is, I'll use an example from Oregon. We have a diversity committee in Oregon that's connected to the village board. And we also have something that's called the Oregon Allies. So the Oregon Allies would be like the advisory council creation. And this is a community group that is not connected to the village board. It was community created, and they really become more of a like a group where people can learn together, they can ask questions, and they can really engage this work and be around other people who want to be involved in that work. They're Facebook friends, they will share stories or memes, what have you. And a lot of times that folds into the people who are also on the diversity committee. So not everyone who is in the Oregon Allies group shows up or comes to or even participates in the village process, but the two work together. So there's a lot of overlap. Okay. And so what happens is with the Oregon Allies, they were able to bring in more diverse voices to the village process. And so that's what we're kind of thinking, because we found a lot of times that you will have groups that one group has control, power, or decision-making abilities, and another group wants access to that. And people have been asking, please show up, please come speak into it, and they can't get anybody to come in. And the other group says, look, we've been trying to get our voice heard, and no one will listen to us. And so really sometimes just having somebody bridge that gap initially is really what we think this will do. And so I'll let, and Dr. Reese, did you have anything you want to add to that before we move to the other questions?
I just wanted to clarify, you know, the comment about sometimes people aren't as candid when they're subject to open records requests. And I just wanted to make it really clear that this is by no means an attempt to get around transparency or open records. It's merely a tool to assist the city in achieving its goals. So I just wanted to clarify that one statement.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And as far as the, have we worked with other municipalities? We have talked with other municipalities, and so we haven't had a contract with them right away. We have been involved, obviously, in our work in different aspects with working with municipalities, but not in a contractual relationship. And as far as getting the right people in the room, I really think we take an approach where we start with the people who are already, who want to be involved. and we create what we think of as a social insurgency. So you find those people who want to be involved, get them equipped and excited about the work they're doing, and then allow them to go out and recruit people, which makes it a lot easier than the city doing that. So if I'm excited about something and people say, well, look, I've gone to city council meetings, I've sent an email, nothing happened, no one listened. I understand that, but come anyhow. Come with me. We're doing something new. And it's easier to get people excited when it's the personal relationships that people are using to draw people in. So typically we find the people who are excited about that, like you use the word champion, who are going to champion that cause, get them equipped and help them get the right material and the right support and foundation, and then have them draw people into that process.
And part of that process of getting people equipped is helping to develop common definitions. So a lot of times we'll sketch out goals. They might involve the word equity, but what does each individual at the table mean when they say equity? And so when we see struggles in that area, many times it's because we're approaching the same goal from a different perspective or a different definition. So we work those things into our training process to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. And then that can really help to branch out and to get more people on board because we're all speaking the same language. The other piece about our training that's unique, we build in the flexibility to bring in people if necessary. So if we get, 6 months in and we find that we're missing a very crucial voice, we have the capacity to fold that into the conversation without compromising the direction or the integrity of the work that we've already done. So we really do try to be flexible and dynamic in that respect. And certainly there are going to be voices left out. That's the nature of any kind of work that we do because everyone has all kinds of limitations. But the idea is that this work is ongoing so that, and that's why we talk about planning for longer than just 1 year, because we know that there are going to be other things that we need to tackle. We can't tackle everything all at once. This is a long-term process. And so thinking that way helps us to help to set expectations so that people understand that we're going to be working those things in as we go.
Thank you.
Alder Groupie?
I just wanted to comment that I'm thrilled about this partnership, and I think it's particularly exciting to be a kind of I don't want to say pioneer, but one of the first municipalities to endeavor into this contract with your organization. So thank you so much for everything that you are going to do with us to work to make our city better. And I'm really looking forward to it. So.
Likewise.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments?
I'll just make a quick comment. I reiterate what Molly or Alder Groupie just stated, and I'm really excited about this partnership as well. I know when I've spoken with people of color in our community and asked them to come to meetings and to be a voice, they often state safety concerns about having to list off their address in order to speak. And there are things like that that we don't often think about because, if you're not a person of color, you don't have those kinds of problems, and we have privilege. And so I'm really excited about that. And at our last council meeting, we were talking with the Riesling group about they're going to be reviewing the June 2nd incident with Keontae Furge. And I really was asking, well, could we look at something more comprehensive and look at all levels of our city government, not just this one incident in our police department? And when I saw your proposal, I was like, wow, that's what this is, but it even goes beyond what I was thinking. So I really appreciate it. Excited to see this happen. Thank you for being here.
Anyone else? No other questions? Okay, well, thank you both for coming. We will be voting on this next time. I guess in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, Brian, I'm assuming we would ask Harry or Karen to be at the next meeting. Alder Thomas.
When are you going to start?
As soon as you sign the contract.
Okay. So yeah, if you think of any other questions, anybody in the council for the next time, we'll have the vote at the next meeting. And I'm glad you're all pleased with what you're seeing. We've spent a lot of time trying to get this together. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so the next, I guess you want to just address the next resolution, Brian?
Yeah,
Consideration.
the next resolution is just the accompanying funding resolution for how we would pay for the contractor service with Nehemiah. Again, it's just taking the contract amount, $56,000 out of undesignated reserve, and this is the budget amendment to facilitate that. Again, item for first reading tonight. We would vote on it formally at the next council meeting.
Okay. Any questions, Alder Thomas?
Is there a reason that we can't take care of this now and get started sooner?
That would be up to the council if you wanted to.
I mean, I
suspend
should
the-
have thought of that with the last resolution, but
Yeah, I mean, typically the guidance you've given is that you prefer to have items go through 2 readings before you adopt them if it's not time sensitive. So that's why we left it for 2 reads, but you're welcome to suspend the rules and adopt it immediately if that's your choice.
well, I for one would like to get started and don't see any reason why we can't. So I will move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
Now, are you talking about this item or the previous item that we
Can I
discussed?
can I do it with that? Can I do it with the last one, although we passed it?
Brian and Bill, I don't know if you have any.
If you're suspending the rules, you're suspending the rules, so you could go back to an item that you previously discussed.
Okay, I
You
would
didn't
go
vote.
back.
You didn't vote on the last item.
I would go back to the last item and move to suspend the rules and take that item out of order.
I'll second.
Any comments? Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a bit of time to think about this. I was involved in the discussions with Nehemiah, so I mean, I'm comfortable with going ahead with it. I don't know if everybody is, if they want to, have another read on it.
Anybody else have anything to add? Alder Coor?
I just want to know, did we get any comments from constituents about this? I know I didn't get any personally, but were there any concerns from the community?
I believe we got one comment, excuse me, expressing pretty much excitement and the fact that we'd be working with Nehemiah.
Yeah, that's all we've heard. And we've had several people recommended Nehemiah over the course of the last 2 months. And I talked to former council member Brian Holmquist several weeks ago too, to get his ideas, because when we had talked to, we had initially said that we would have some community conversations, and I talked to Brian because he's involved in crisis response with the Madison School District and works, with a lot of different groups in the area, and he recommended Nehemiah as well. So I think we've heard lots of positives. Anyone else? Alder Moore, and then
Yeah, I would
Doug?
say, to add to that, I would also say that American Family also works with Nehemiah, and so Josh Peterson, who was the original creator of the commission idea, was also very supportive when he heard about it, and I just want to extend again. She just mentioned the mayor just mentioned a couple of months, but I just want to say that this has been something that's been in the works for a while, and I really appreciate. We've gotten dozens, if not hundreds, of ideas from the community of individuals or people or organizations to look at, and I appreciate the mayor is listening and going after this quite some time ago. In fact, it's one of the reasons why it took this long is because Nehemiah is in high demand at the moment, so it's hard to even get them on the calendar.
You done?
Yeah.
Alder Wood.
I was just going to add that, as Nancy Aldermore had referenced, we had some of the other folks involved in talking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission had a chance to review this proposal, and they gave us feedback, and they were it was all positive. So.
Anybody else? Well, we have an motion on the floor to take both items B and C out of order. So we'll vote on item B first. Or I guess we can vote on them both together, huh?
Do we need to move approval for both?
Out of order?
First of all, we have to vote to take them out of order. Brian, do we have to vote on them separately? to take them out of order?
We'll need a roll call for the one. for the-
Well, yeah, one of them will need a roll call vote for the dollar amount.
Right, but do we, in order to take it out of order, can we vote to take the two out of order with one vote, or do we need to have two separate votes?
I think you can vote to take them out of order in one vote.
Okay, so this vote, it's been moved and seconded to take these two items out of order to approve them tonight. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Then is there a motion to approve item B, which is authorizing the contract with Nehemiah?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. Okay, then the next vote will be, is there a motion to approve item C, which is the resolution amending the 2020 operating budget to fund this from the fund balance? Is there a motion to approve that?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion about that? Okay, if not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Groupie,
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Schilling,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Coor,
Aye.
Alder Thomas.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Dr. Reese. I imagine you heard that. So Brian will be in, I think Brian, you'll be in touch, I assume. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, you all. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, the next item, D, consideration of resolution 20-8-2427, adopting police standard operating procedure, SOP 2020-1, related to the use of stop sticks. This is put forth by the Public Safety Committee and this is, again, is just the first read on this one. So I will let Police Chief Ostrenga.
Hi. Okay, so stop sticks, we had discussed them in the budget, the capital budget last year. It was decided that the dollar amount was such that we would put it in the operations budget. We are currently probably the only agency in Dane County that does not use stop sticks. If you read through, I'm not going to read every line on the resolution, but we do have quite a few high-speed pursuits and reckless driving that comes through our city almost on a daily and nightly basis. And many of these vehicles are stolen and they're involved in other serious crimes. So the stop stick was originally designed to take the speed out of high-speed pursuits. And so it was proposed, I've been holding off for years on these just because I was concerned about the safety of the officers, particularly on the Beltline. Realistically, you need a solid barrier to protect you from vehicles out there, and the Beltline's dangerous enough. So until I came up with an idea of how you could sort of guard an officer if they're throwing these stop sticks across the concrete median, I was sort of in a quandary until I thought about for them to use it in that form, they need to have two officers. They have to have one officer sort of as a buffer and also as a lookout for that officer that's in front of the action so that they don't pull a stop stick once it's been deployed and end up getting hit by a car coming up behind them, sort of going in the same direction. So until we could come up with that idea, I was really opposed to them, but they are a good tool. They do take the speed out of high-speed pursuits. We had a case maybe a month ago where we had a burglary in Monona, and once one officer got to the scene, a second officer was in the area, and the offenders fled in a vehicle at an extremely high speed, and that turned out to be a stolen car. So it's not just for the Beltline, but it's also to try to keep our secondary roads safer for our residents. Alder Wood, actually, I neglected to put the pursuit policy in the packet, and I sent it to Alder Wood this morning. So it's mentioned in the standard operating procedure of what justifies a pursuit. And that was a general order that was just updated in February. It's 6.02. So it puts restrictions on when they can use these things and how they can do it in a safe manner.
And I've asked you to, Wally, to give that to Brian to include in the packet for the next meeting. So you all have that. Do you have anything else to add, Wally?
Well, I mean, we have, just to remind people that we have our policies and procedures. Those were updated, those were from around 2002. They were updated in 2012, and they're all posted on our website. So our older policies are called policies. Anything that's replacing them have been called general orders. And through the years, we haven't replaced all of them, but it's sort of a work in progress. But that's how you differentiate between the older policies and the newer general orders. The newer general orders started around 2013. We've tried to replace those through the years. Now they're under scrutiny. Public safety is currently looking at our use of force general orders. So there's 3 of them that will that are coming up for a second read later this month. That's about all I can think of. I see I got Sergeant Losby is materialized, and Ryan is actually our emergency vehicle operation instructor. And earlier this year, he trained everyone on the department with the proper use of stop sticks. We were able to purchase 4 sets of stop sticks in 2019 with funds that we had in our operating budget, in the anticipation that we'd start using these in early 2020, but there was a delay in getting this SOP together. So that's why they haven't been put in action. And since that time, now everything is being looked at quite closely by both public safety and city council. That's why we're here tonight.
Sergeant Lasby, did you have anything else to add?
You're on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
I just want to say I've been trying to push this particular tool since 2004. And yes, that was with the prior chief as well. And every time I kept getting shot down by both chiefs for the same reason. I think the concern with the city council is it is a danger for us to be using these. It's a danger to the officers. It's not a danger to anybody else. The whole reason for using them is to slow down that vehicle, and it saves lives. It's a proven tool. It's one that I used before 2004, the exact same product, stop sticks, and it's highly effective. And we have now transitioned to the stolen auto burglary epidemic is now our #2 problem, short of the war on heroin. And I think that's why we're trying to get over this hump, is to get this tool in place. And we are pretty much the only department in Dane County that doesn't have them. And we're in a prime location to use them with the 51 and Beltline corridor. We're in the perfect location. Most pursuits go through Monona, and we can hopefully be able to use that tool to combat our second biggest problem.
Okay, I see Alder Groupie has her hand up.
Just a few questions and a comment. I was grateful to see that within the, the training document that there are procedures to file against the use of stop sticks if a involved vehicle is somehow involved or damaged during the process. Just a few questions related to language in the training document specifically, and I'll just list them off. If you can get to them, great. Otherwise, I know that this is a first read, so we will have additional discussion. One component of the document talks about, deadly force being justified. And I'm just wondering what a scenario would be in which deadly force is justified in relation to the use of stop sticks. I'm wondering if Monona already has designated the pre-selected areas for deployment of the stop sticks. I know that that was recommended in the training document to make sure that, you're following these very specific protocol about, line of sight, not on a curve, not in pedestrian proximity, etc. So I'm just curious if you've already discussed that. You don't need to tell us where they are. I just wanted to know if you've already done that in training. And then it's, it says caution against use of excessive speeds, vehicles going at excessive speeds, but it seems like the purpose is to use these in sort of these high speed engagements with cars. So I'm just curious about how this may or may not conflict with our existing policy or SOP about desisting the pursuit once excessive speeds are reached. So I'm just, what the threshold is there between those two policies. I think that's it. If you, the other thing I just wanted to mention is, given that we have not used these with our own force previously, I'll be curious to see how we collect data about officer injury, other unintended consequences of using the stop sticks, and then just making sure that we are keeping up and tracking our data to make sure that we're using these appropriately and, would stop using them if for some reason they were not found to be a useful tool for our department. And thank you both for being here to share about this tonight.
Would either of you like to answer Alder Groupie's questions, or would you like to provide answers at the next council meeting? It's totally up to you.
Sure. I mean, I can hit up the deadly force question. That would fall under the use of force policy and the definition of deadly force. And that's where it would have to be, I think what they're saying is you can't use stop sticks on anything with less than 4 tires. And Ryan, you could nod your head yes or no if you agree with me. So in other words, like a motorcycle or a 3-wheel vehicle, you would not use stop sticks on unless it was a deadly force situation. For it to be a deadly force situation, someone, if they're not stopped, it's going to be imminent that they're going to do serious bodily harm or kill someone. So that's where it raises that to the deadly force level. Is that what you would think, Ryan?
Correct.
And we had talked generally about different locations around the city where they would be good to deploy, as far as where on Monona Drive, where on Broadway, where on 51, and where on the Beltline. So we've discussed that with people already.
Do you want to address any of the other ones, or?
Well, I think there's the excessive speed caution. Ryan, you want to touch on the excessive speed one? I don't know if you're referring to in the booklet.
I'm not sure either, but I mean, the use of stop sticks is going to be almost always used in excessive speed situations. Obviously, there's times when we use them when speed is not really an issue. They can also be used when, let's say, we stop a stolen vehicle or a suspect that we fear is going to flee from us. We can literally throw them under the tire while it's stopped to prevent them from taking off. But most of these are going to be used in the higher and excessive speed situations.
And when that does happen, it's not like you throw it out there and the tire immediately blows up. That doesn't happen. The projectiles go into the tire, and then it's like a straw. It's like a sharp straw, and then the air comes out very slowly. So there's been a lot of chases that have occurred where stop sticks have been deployed, and the car keeps going, but they're not able to sustain that high speed. They have to, they can only go maybe 30 miles an hour instead of 100 miles an hour based on the friction with the tires falling off. But there's been times where people will drive until their tires fall off the car.
Alder Groupie, did you have a follow-up?
I just wanted to offer clarification on that question about excessive speeds. So it's page 64 And it says to reduce the risk of serious or fatal injuries resulting from a vehicle crash, use extreme caution when pursuits reach excessive speeds. Suspects have an increased risk of losing control of the vehicle if tires are deflated while driving at above normal highway speeds. Fleeing suspects appear to be, and then also use extreme caution when fleeing suspects appear to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol or similar impairments, which may increase the risk of losing control of the vehicle. So that's why I asked about, sometimes we have, once they reach a certain speed, we stop the pursuit. And so I just didn't know what the conflict would be, or, how these two tools, procedures would combine together once we purchase the stop sticks. And presumably you already have an idea before using stop sticks whether or not someone is presumably under the influence while they're driving.
Many times you don't know. You don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, if there's if there's erratic driving along with high speeds and not stopping is one thing. Other times, like with all these stolen cars, I mean, we would never do it on the shoulder of the Beltline during rush hour when these cars are going 100 miles an hour. We wouldn't get involved in that. There's too much traffic around. The most common use is going to be like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody else on the road except the officers and the offenders, many times with stolen cars, and they just do not stop.
Thank you.
Alder Thomas.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I don't know how many of you read at public safety two comments. At the last meeting, public safety meeting, the chief gave us stuff on the use of force, and it talked about the number of speeding vehicles. And one of the things that struck me was the number of times they would run red lights going 80 miles an hour, 4 and 5 times. The danger to people when people are driving down the highway like that is significant. And these things are meant to prevent things like that from happening and really save more lives. But I called or sent emails to smaller police departments in the county, Sun Prairie, Middleton, Fitchburg, and asked them how long they'd had them and how they felt about them, if they were experienced. To a person, they've had them, some of them have had them for 11 years, somebody had for 10 years, somebody for, I want to say 14 years. They found them an invaluable tool. They thought their officers were safer with them than without them. They had not had any serious incidents there was one incident where there was another vehicle involved. But other than that, they had nothing but good things to say about this, and wondered, actually, some of them, why Monona was so far behind in not having them.
Anyone else? Alder Moore, and then Alder Schilling, and then Alder Wood.
So I just, not sure, Chief, if I heard an answer to Alder Groupie's question, which is, there seems to be an inconsistency between, I think she said page 64, of talking about not pursuing, and the importance of not pursuing speeding vehicles in some respects, but then obviously this is a tool which obviously we have been pursuing. So where generally how do you square that conflict, and where generally do you make a choice to pursue versus not pursue? Is there a juncture at which you decide to pursue versus not pursue, recognizing that some pursuits are in fact dangerous, which is why you have page 64?
Sure. One of the things in the state of Wisconsin, police officers by state statute have to use due regard. They have to use due regard. That's in our policies. That's in the state statute. So in other words, the offenders don't use due regard. They just drive recklessly. They go through red lights at 80, 100 miles an hour. Our officers have to be able to stop if there's cars coming. We can't just blast through. So when it gets to the point where it's a chase, and we monitor chases very closely when they're done, we look at them. If it's a point where we feel that the officer was acting in a reckless manner, they're subject to discipline. They're subject to counseling notices and potential disciplinary action. And if it goes on, if they continue to do that, they could be terminated. So we watch it very carefully to make sure that they're using due regard. That's where the stop sticks kick in, is that, you know, if you have it, you can't just use them anytime you want to. If the situation has to be right, it has to be dry, it has to be flat, it has to be straight. You have to have cover. You can't just like willy-nilly just throw them out in heavy traffic or near a school or anything where it would be dangerous. I mean, you look at some of we had 4 fatal accidents last year, and you know, in a couple of those, there was no one there to deploy stop sticks, but you know, we had the guy that I think it was a Monday night after a council meeting, left the park, the skateboard park. He was all despondent and went north on Winneco Road, extremely high rate of speed. He had alcohol and marijuana in his system. There's nothing we could have done to stop that. We couldn't have used stop sticks. We weren't going to chase him. He just, you know, self-destructed by launching himself into a pole. So these things are going to happen. I mean, we can, you know, try as best we can to try to stop people from driving in a reckless manner, but there's no, you know, magic pill that's going to stop it from happening. It's always going to happen. Where there's crashes. It's just another tool for us to try to prevent it if we get the opportunity to.
Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Alder Schilling?
Yeah, I was just, I mostly just had a comment. You know, at our last meeting, we made a commitment to incorporate the 8 can't wait policies. And one of those is requiring de-escalation. And so you know, when I did a good amount of research on the stop sticks and talked with some officer friends, and they are really dangerous for the officers. And I know I've heard many times that a lot of our officers are really young. And I think like what Chief Ostrenga just mentioned is, you know, what are the chances that an officer is there at that very moment when you need to be there? That would be great if you were, but it's probably very rare. I think for me, I think, you know, right now we just approved Nehemiah to conduct a kind of a comprehensive overlook of what we're doing here. We've got the Riesling group over, you know, looking over some policies, not this specifically, but for me, I just can't help but question the timing of this. And we're looking at, you know, revisiting all of these policies and making a commitment to requiring de-escalation. And now here we are talking about implementing another use of force tool. It seems curious to me, and it seems a little bit backwards, and that's just my observation.
Alder Wood.
Yeah, my observation is that this policy, well, I think the Public Safety Committee needs to also review the pursuit policy, because these are authorized to be deployed when only in pursuits. And I think that it might be instructive for the council to get a copy of the pursuit rule that we have in place now, so that they know the situations these could be deployed in, or that the pursuit could start that might end up with them being deployed. So is public safety planning to take up the pursuit policy anytime soon?
Alder Thomas, did you want to answer that, or?
Well, I'm going to
Chief
let
Ostrenga?
because he's sort of directing the order in which we're reviewing these things.
Well, we have the use of force general orders before public safety at a second read, but we can put the pursuit policy on for the next agenda. There were 11 different policies that we got from CIVMIC that recommended, you know, those would be like the priority ones, and the pursuit one was one of those policies. So we can put the pursuit policy on the agenda for public safety coming up at the end of this month.
Anyone else?
You know, I did receive one bit of constructive advice, which I thought might be useful. And someone mentioned maybe changing the language to tire deflation device, because the stop sticks is kind of a misnomer. It sounds like it stops them right away. And, you know, you envision how terrible that could be for someone. So I don't know if that is helpful at all, but the tire deflation device apparently is what some departments use in their policy writing.
I think ours are called stopping devices.
Okay.
Stop stick is just the brand of
Yeah,
the
it is.
tire deflation device that we're using. That's why it's mentioned in a standard operating procedure to deal with that. In the actual pursuit policy, it calls them road spikes.
Yeah,
road
that's
stick system to help with the apprehension of fleeing vehicles during a pursuit. But stop stick is actual brand. It's kind of like, you know, it's a copying machine or it's a Xerox. We have Xerox mentioned in the SOP because that's what we're using as opposed
Yeah.
to OP.
the exact statement was to change the road spikes to tire deflation device, because road spikes sounds very, you know, severe.
So just so you're aware, in the state of Wisconsin, to remain certified as a law enforcement officer, you have to have emergency vehicle operation training every 2 years, and that deals with pursuits, and it drives home not just driving skills, but also how you conform to your individual department policy. So that's covered every 2 years, along with when we do that, even though we haven't had them in the past, stop stick training was also part of the EVOC training. EVOC is what is the acronym for emergency vehicle operation.
Anyone else? Well, if there's nothing further on this, we will be including the pursuit policy in the next packet, although it also sounds like public safety will be considering it as well in an upcoming meeting. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wally and Sergeant Lasby. Next item is discussion and update on staffing, budgetary, and city operations contingency plans for COVID-19. It's the city administrator.
Thank you. Not a lot to add for this particular meeting. We are obviously aware of the statewide mask orders, so we're doing our best to get the message out there about that. And you know, it's been in place in City Hall and the other city facilities for some time now, so doing our part, at least locally. Any questions from the council about any sort of COVID response?
Nothing? Okay, thank
Thank
you. Next thing is reports of committees, commissions, etc. Alder Groupie.
Just to note that the Senior Citizens Committee will meet this Wednesday at 4 p.m. and we're just going to be discussing budgetary items, but just in case anybody wants to sit on that Zoom, it is as ever a public meeting. So.
Okay, Alder Thomas.
No report.
Alder Moore.
No report.
Alder Coor.
Public Works is meeting on Wednesday for the first time since March. And so we'll be picking up kind of where we left off there. It's an open meeting, so please join us via Zoom.
Alder Schilling.
Yeah, on July 22nd, the mound marker was placed at 4007 Monona Drive. So it's kind of right across from Hoey Apothecary. So you can see it there. It's quite visible when you're biking by for sure. And when you're driving, you can even spot it. So, and then next week is landmarks and media committee on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Or sorry,
Alder,
Wednesday and Thursday nights.
Oh, sorry. Alder Wood.
MPO board meets this Wednesday night. Otherwise, no report.
City Attorney Cole, did you have anything to share?
No, nothing to report.
Okay, City Clerk.
I'm just going to report that the ballot drop box is a huge hit. I pulled 50 ballots out of there over from the weekend and another 10 during the day, and there's probably some in there now because people the word has gotten out and they're using it. We're doing still lots of absentee voting, and the in-person absentee lasts until the 7th. So we're serving quite a few people, and it's going really well.
Great. City Administrator?
No report.
Okay. I don't really have anything to report. I would like to thank Alder Wood for covering for me, running the council meeting last time and at several other meetings. I really appreciate it, Doug. Otherwise, we have several appointments. We've got some new chief inspectors, Ann Brophy, Susan Fox, and Diane Steele. And then we have two just regular election inspectors, Joyce Hornberger and Sarah DeFelice. These are all effective through December 31st of 2021. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? They are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I had a question for Joan first, if I could.
Sure.
What is the last day that you can drop off if you have an absentee ballot and you want to drop it off and say in the drop box? What's the last day you can do?
The deadline is election day by 8 o'clock. I will be checking that box at 8 o'clock. We urge you to drop them sooner so we can get them processed and ready to go. But people do have until 8 o'clock on election night in order to deliver ballots.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess everybody remember that there is only one polling site for this election at the community center.
Yes.
So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great time in Maine.
Thanks. I'll still be patching in for meetings so it's really no different for all of you.
You'll just be sitting on a dock, right?
Yeah, right.